The FBI's Cyber Action Team has been in place for nearly 20 years. National concern about cybersecurity didn't start last week or even last year, after all. The CAT, as the FBI calls it, started because of the number of cyber incidents coming into FBI field offices. For an update on the 65-member CAT, we turn to Unit Chief Scott Ledford. Mr. Ledford, good to have you with us.
Hi, good morning.
Tell us more about the CAT team. 65 sounds like a pretty elite little force within the FBI.
CAT, as you said, was formed in 2005, consists of about 65 operators positioned in more than 30 field offices and divisions around the U.S., and as well as even 3 legal attaches, including Germany, Prague, and The Hague. The full-time team, of course, is stationed here in Northern Virginia. We're about 15 minutes from Dulles International Airport by design, and consists entirely of special agents, computer scientists, and information technology specialists.
And basically then your mission now is helping entities in the public, in the economy, that are affected by cyber threats or cyber incidents?
We do. So it's a highly specialized team. We do for cyber, say what like SWAT or HRT does for the FBI. So we respond to government agencies, other government agencies that are targeted, private sector, even foreign partners. We're a global fly team, so we'll respond across the world to help our partners, those victims investigate and determine how they were compromised, when, identify what data was taken, potentially even help them understand and mitigate the threat in some ways, and essentially kind of write the narrative of the intrusion to help them understand what happened and what occurred and how they can respond to it.
And how do the cases come to you? Do people know to call the CAT, or how do you get the work in over the transom?
Yeah, sure. So the FBI, as you may know, we have 56 field offices across the U.S., and they are responsible for day-to-day investigations, not just cyber, but counterintelligence, criminal investigative division, as well as counterterrorism. And typically a victim in that office or a victim in that AOR, for example, in their area of responsibility will be either compromised and they'll notify the FBI, but more often than not, it's actually the FBI notifying the company or the partner that they've been compromised, and then that field office will open up an investigation. And through that initial investigation, they'll make a determination that they need additional expertise, or it's just a large-scale intrusion that exhausts the local resources of that field office. So they'll ask CAT, our fly team, to respond on site to perform the IR, the investigative response.
And you said the FBI will sometimes let the entity know that it's been compromised. And how do you know?
Sometimes just through our investigations and intelligence collections, we'll identify information in an ongoing investigation that helps us identify that there's another victim that's been targeted by this same threat actor, either through, like I said, through intelligence or through IP addresses we identify. We notice that this actor is targeting other companies, and we'll identify that company and notify them of the intrusion, and then work together with them to determine the appropriate level of response, whether it's them working on their own to determine what occurred and to remediate, or if they're asking for FBI assistance or maybe even third-party assistance from a private sector cybersecurity company.
So, for example, if you know of a group in Romania or something that has been attacking healthcare entities, that gives you some prior understanding of where the next attack might happen.
Sometimes it can, yes.
And what are you seeing in terms of trends? I mean, I mentioned healthcare because that seems to be a really big target these days. Not exclusively, but maybe it's the most vulnerable, and that's where people go to get the ransomware. But what else do you see going on generally?
I think we've seen a shift over the last couple years where the complexity of the intrusion has increased. We're seeing more vulnerabilities being exploited and quicker access to the systems, as well as actors living off the land, as we describe it, where they're essentially compromising the network in some sort of way, and then compromising credentials of legitimate users on that network, and then using those credentials to move around the network and exfiltrate data, which is often more difficult for entities to detect, because from their perspective, oftentimes it looks like it's just a user on their network, a legitimate employee who's using that network, not necessarily an adversary who's compromised and accessed their network.
And is phishing the most common still way of getting those credentials and so on?
I believe phishing is still one of the most common ways that we're seeing that, and then as well as occasionally just exploits that are out there, often unpatched systems. We're still seeing companies that are compromised by vulnerabilities that have been known for quite some time. I guess a good thing is that we're starting to see a decrease in the amount of dwell time, meaning that how long an actor is on a network before they are detected, either by the company or through a notification by us. But I think there's a question as to whether or not that dwell time has decreased because of the elevation and the expertise and the capabilities to detect those intrusions, or just simply ransomware, which by nature, the actors want you to know that they're on the system once they've compromised it and begun encryption, because that's where they want to exploit your data and your company and extort you financially.
We were speaking with Scott Ledford. He is the unit chief for the FBI's Cyber Action Team, the CAT. And there must be some interagency cooperation going on here. CISA, is kind of the keeper of vulnerabilities and the big software trends. Do you communicate with them and some others so that everybody knows what everybody else is up to?
We do regularly. We have this whole of government approach that we take in response to intrusions that are targeting, the U.S. government and our allies. So it's not uncommon for us to deploy on site together with CISA to an incident, whether it's another government agency, critical infrastructure, or a private sector partner. We share intelligence. We share information with them. We notify them of our actions and our deployments. They notify us of theirs, and it's a partnership. And specifically what was outlined in Presidential Policy Directive PPD 41, where it designates the FBI as lead for threat response and CISA is the lead for asset response. So we do that together as a team. Cyber's a team sport. We're more effective for the American people if we do that together.
And when you do have a response, do people go literally on site to that company or that entity that's been hacked? And then what happens?
So more often than not, we do physically deploy on-site globally, or at minimum, it may be a hybrid. We don't necessarily send the entire team, obviously, and certainly not 65. We'll send anywhere typically from 3 to 4 personnel physically on site to walk alongside that company to help them figure out what happened and how they can respond to it. And of course, inform our investigations so we can try to hold the individuals accountable for compromising that network. So it can be oftentimes 3 to 4 people physically there, and there'll be a remote team who are off-site but still assisting with that investigation, which can include malware reverse engineers. That can be intrusion analysts who are seeing the data in real time as we collect it and ingest it and normalize it and start to do analysis on it. And then they can remotely help us look at that data and help determine together what's occurred at the victim without overwhelming the victim or the partner with so many personnel from the U.S. government, from the FBI, from CISA, but still afford them good amount of resources to help them understand what's occurred on their network.
Well, I imagine when you have a ransomware attack that's hit your company or whatever, it's some reassurance to have FBI agents actually show up on site. It must be a good morale booster.
I hope so. We're there, to help the victim, right? And the truth is you can do everything right and still get compromised. So our job there is to help walk alongside that victim, help them understand what's occurred on their network and investigate that. And obviously, we want them to be able to get back to their business as quickly as possible. And we want to be able to collect the information that we need to try to hold the individuals accountable for that, whether that's indictments or sanctions, whatever the case may be. Their point is to conduct the investigation, gather that data, analyze it, generate some actionable leads that our field offices can follow up on, and then help the victim kind of return to normal as best as we can.
So you'll log on to their systems and actually look at what happened, analysis of logs and that kind of thing?
We do. So we are there under their consent. So we ask for consent or permission from the company for us to respond, and then we work with that entity to determine what level of consent they're comfortable with us doing. So that could mean us deploying an endpoint agent to collect data. That could simply just mean them providing data for us to analyze and look at, but it can include collecting digital artifacts from their network, logs from their firewall or their SIM, any number of things that would help us understand exactly what's occurred on their network and how they can respond to it better.
And most of or at least what you read, is that a lot of the hacking and the break-ins and the ransomware originate from outside the United States and therefore basically beyond the physical reach of federal entities. But do you ever discover, say, a hacking ring or some nefarious group in the United States, and then you can raid them?
We do on a regular basis. We do, as you said, we find actors who are operating overseas, sometimes in countries that are difficult to reach, which is where some of the sanctions may come in, or some of the international cooperation that we have with the host countries that we operate in across the world. But oftentimes we'll see them operating here within the United States, or even there are partnership times between operators who are living here in the United States, working actors who are in this country, partnering with overseas actors as well. And, it's on a regular basis where our field offices are leading the investigations to hold them accountable, conducting search warrants and arrests and implementing surveillance to try to collect data regarding them and identify who they are and where they're at. So we ultimately